conversation, that's fine with me, but that's a question that I think the public would like to know before the evening is over. You don't have to tell me right now and, have one person speak for all 9 members, but I think that as a taxpayer, I want to know where my $500 is going and who's handling it and accountability for it. And as a taxpayer, I want to know that if you borrowed $10 million in June, 3 of which approximately was for Hellman, and now you're telling everybody that you're fundraising to pay for Hellman, I want to know by the end of the evening, because it's right here, will that be used to pay down part of the $3 million, however much you are able to fundraise. I understand you're not going to get $3 million. I'm not asking you to. I don't think that's possible. But whatever amount that you do raise, I want to know how you will be applying those funds. Is it a special maintenance account that's going to be created for Hellman Field, which is what was mentioned at the committee meeting? Will it pay down the debt, some portion of that $3 million? Or is there a third alternative that I don't know about? I would like to know, as a taxpayer, what is happening with the money. And I'd like to know by the end of the evening, since it's on this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Furlong. Anyone else who would like to?
You had it on photo.
If not,
We
we'll
didn't
move
get
to
the first part.
consent.
Are you sure?
Are there any of the items A through G that board members would like to have voted on separately?
It wasn't blinking.
If not, do I have a motion for approval of the consent calendar?
Sorry.
I have a lot of silence. All right, I will take the motion from Mr. Deming and the second from Mr. Thompson to approve the consent calendar. Comments or questions from board members? If not, I'm sorry, Mrs. Yarden.
I had to get to my mic. I was just wondering why the personnel report was in a different format this month. Because it was different from...
Mr. Scarpantonio, since that emanates from your office, can you address that? I noticed this as well.
Yes, it is in a different format this month. You may remember previously I had a personnel committee meeting. I presented some suggested changes to the personnel report, and the one comment that I got back after individuals looked at it was that they would like who the individual might be replacing. So what we did is we put a column in there for the names of those individuals that these new hires would be replacing. These are sorted by category. If you look at the first column, or by group I should say, you look at the first column, you can see the groups as you go down through. Administration, there's 3 administration approvals, and then it continues to go down for the 5 pages that are here, and then the 6th page starts with the EDR responsibilities. The last 3 pages are all EDR requests. So again, we modified it.
It's blinking now.
Certainly,
There wasn't any
our office is open to suggestions if you would like to somehow restructure it. That's fine.
And then it said, oh, the
Again,
power shut down.
we wanted to take
I said, what?
take the opportunity to attempt this, and probably the most important thing I'll add to it, it's much easier electronically to put this together than it was previously, so it helps the HR department.
Yeah, my comment would be, I mean, there were titles in there, like there were breaks and titles. It made it easier to read. So I guess I would just, if you still leave it in the, I guess this is an Excel format, just to put headings or breaks in there with the different categories, so it's easier.
So, okay, when the groups change, then you would just like a blank line or something
Or
like that?
and with a heading.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
That's
Thank
fine.
you.
Any other comments? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Next item is the student liaison.
Do you have your mic on?
The next item is the student liaison report. Mr. Callins.
Dr. Gunell, can everyone hear me?
Would be.
That one shuts it off. Like this one. You can turn it on.
All right, so I did thank you for having me again, as always. We have a few new things that Student Council is working on, as well as some things I'm noticing as this is the first meeting since school started. One major event that we're having coming up really soon is this Friday, which is the opening home game for football at Hellman Field against the Chamonix. Student Council has been tasked with making a few decorations for the event, including balloon decorations, decorating the sidewalk, chalk going up, a field goal contest coordinated with Mr. Babb, and face painting with P's and number ones and Go Rams on guests. So I think we're all really looking forward to this event. I think it's going to be really exciting to see. So I hope to see all of you there. Week after is Pink Out, our annual Pink Out game, again, which is Thursday, October 2nd this year. Our shirts orders came in today, and staff members, we've opened up to every building in the district for staff members to purchase t-shirts. We've gotten a lot of requests over the years for that to become an option. And we've actually gotten quite a few orders from staff members over the past few days. And then selling to students will begin this Wednesday at lunch. And then any extra shirts after Thursday of next week will be sold at the game. And we'll be using the same receipt system to make sure everything's accounted for, the same system we used last year that's been coordinated with the administration. Again, homecoming's coming up, but I've covered not much new. East Rockville Township has approved the use of the small cart, their township for the parade route from the firehouse to the high school. One idea that Student Council is coordinating is a almost rival food drive with Quakertown. This is a way that we can show friendly competition between the two schools, and we think it's going to raise a lot of donations that could be donated to local food banks or Phil Abundance. I mean, that's a detail that hasn't been worked out yet, but look for that around November time. As of 6 o'clock, they sent an email to the school board members about student representation on each committee. So in addition to me here, there will be at least one student on all of the other committees. And I think that's important to bring representation from, because a lot of the decisions of the board are made at lower levels. So I think that'll be beneficial. And then finally, I just wanted to say, a few days ago, we had a club day at the high school, which is where students can look at all the different clubs that are available at the high school, sign up for. And I just wanted to say how amazing it was, the variety that I saw club day from all sorts of types of clubs. So many students were signing up for them, and I think that's something Pennridge is or needs to be known for, because I think the opportunities at this high school are just truly amazing, and they cannot be forgotten, whether it's athletics, academic clubs, just extracurricular, volunteer. The list goes on and on. So I thought that was just something really exciting. As an officer of several clubs, I think it's just something that's really great about this school, and I really appreciate it. I'm sure all the other students in the high school do too. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Kellens. At this point, for the President's report, first I want to mention that the comprehensive plan is now at the point where it will be posted tomorrow or definitely this week in order for the public to review it. The public has, I believe it's 28 days, certainly roughly a month to review and perhaps comment on it. We had a large number of volunteers. I believe there were 60-some people who volunteered to serve on this committee from the employees and from the district residents. I want to thank those who did serve, who were chosen and did serve, including Mr. Thompson, who served on that committee. And I think that this is something well worthwhile. In the past, we have been doing strategic plans, so this is a bit different, similar but different. And one of the things is it does not have a 6-year time frame, which is probably a good thing, because 6 years is a long time in the school business, in most businesses for that matter. This will have a 3-year expiration date, so to speak. So there will be a need to accomplish it more quickly. So I would encourage any in the audience who would like to do so to look on the website to see the comprehensive plan once it's posted this week. I also want to comment on something that was printed in one of the local papers, specifically the Intelligencer. That has to do with the lists that are all published and we're all fascinated by. I'm not a big fan of these on the whole, but I do think that in this case, the district, these were really top high school rankings. And there were 3 of them, 2 by Newsweek and 1 by the Daily Beast. Newsweek has done this at America's top high schools for quite a number of years. And they ranked 500 schools, and Pennridge was among them, actually ranked 217th in the country, not in the state, in the country. Similarly, true for their beating the odds, which is the category they call it. I think that's a particular honor to the district in the sense that that was based on students who are on free and reduced lunches and what sort of progress they're making relative to the expectation. Only 3 of the local schools were ranked on that particular list, Pennridge being the second of the 3. The top one, not surprisingly in many cases, the top schools in the area tend to be the wealthiest, and in this case, New Hope Silver rated at the top of the list. We also rated on the top high schools for the Daily Beast. I think this is a tribute, not just to the high school, which obviously benefits from the award, but these students, for the most part, have been in the district 12 or 13 years. So it's a credit to all the administrators and teachers throughout the system over that period of time that they were able to get these students to the place where they have achieved this kind of ranking. I hope we can hold on to these rankings. I think that's always a bigger issue than getting there the first time, but it's good to see the name there in print. So with that, I will move to Dr. Radigan's superintendent report.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yarnell. First, I'd like to say thank you to the Sellersville Elementary School for their displays in our lobby and in the boardroom. And a special thank you to the Grass PTO for their generous donation for technology that will be used at Grass. So thank you again to our great parent groups who are always helping. Before I share some good news about our students, I'd like to tell you about a couple of important topics. This first one is a report from our lead nurse. By now you've probably seen news reports about the enterovirus D68, a particularly nasty bug that affects mostly infants through teens. But please don't panic. We have not seen any evidence of the virus among students in our district, and there have been no reports of infections in Bucks County. However, it's always best to be proactive in these situations. There are certain precautions we all can take to reduce the chance of contracting the virus, such as washing our hands often, covering our coughs and sneezes, and cleaning and disinfecting frequently touched surfaces, including doorknobs and toys. And of course, stay home if you are sick. The primary symptoms seen with EVD68 is respiratory illness. Children with a history of asthma are more likely to experience moderate to severe respiratory symptoms. Most infected people only have mild forms of these symptoms. Like the common cold, this virus is likely spread when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or touches public surfaces. So please be safe. When Pennridge hosts Neshaminy, as Nick said, on Friday, September 26, it will be the first time since 1930 that the Rams varsity football team will play a home game somewhere other than Papa Yoder Field. To celebrate the move to Hellman Track and Field, the community is invited to an evening of festivities that include a commemorative giveaway, performances by the high school and middle school bands, a special delivery of the game ball, and ceremonial coin toss at midfield. There are more details on the website, and I'm sure you'll be seeing stories in the media over the next few days. So we hope you can join us for this historic night. I'd like to say a special thank you to the board and to the contractors and the Pennridge staff who worked diligently to make sure that we met this deadline of September 26th. It was no easy feat, so thank you for everyone involved. Senior Maya Hayden has successfully auditioned for the National Association for Music Education's All-National Honors Orchestra, the top honor a public school student can achieve. She will be in Nashville, Tennessee, October 26th through 30th, playing the French horn with the best musicians from across the United States and performing a concert of the highest quality literature. Last year, Maya accomplished a musical feat no one else in the school's history has ever done. She successfully auditioned and was accepted to participate in 6 of the most advanced musical ensembles in Pennsylvania. These were the Bucks County Music Festival, the District 11 Band, the District 11 Orchestra, Region 6 Band, Region 6 Orchestra, and the All-State Band. So congratulations, Maya. Another of our amazing talented musicians is violinist Young Lim, known as Rachel, who is only a sophomore. She won the 2014 Voorhees Concerto Competition, which is sponsored by the Allentown Symphony Association. She will be the featured performer at the 6th Annual Young Musicians String Festival at Miller Symphony Hall on November 2nd at 2 p.m. So the entire community wishes Maya and Rachel congratulations and best of luck in representing our music program. And lastly, our sports teams are off to a great start. The girls volleyball team is 6-0, girls soccer 7-0-2. They've started the season undefeated. The girls volleyball team had an incredible day on Saturday, taking first place at the Quakertown Invitational Tournament. They beat Downingtown West in the finals. Also this weekend, the boys water polo team won the Beast of the East Flight 2 tournament. The golf team is 15-3. The girls tennis team 7-2. Football team 3-1, and they've all started off, as you can see, very strong. Finally, senior Marissa Shiva continued her winning ways in cross country. She is undefeated this year while setting several course records and has won 2 invitational meets. So thank you to all these students for helping us to remain Pennridge proud. That's my report, Dr. Yarnell.
Thank you. At this point, we will move to the committee reports. I'm going to ask, as seemingly has become more common, that Mrs. Miller yield the first spot to Mr. Deming and the Personnel Committee, since we are making appointments of several administrators tonight.
I will move directly to number of motions. Excuse me, thank you. I'll move directly to the motions. Motion number 1 is to appoint Kathy Brewster as Director of Curriculum Assessment and Instructional Technology, effective on her earliest date availability.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Deming and seconded by Mr. Regomo to approve the appointment of Kathy Brewster as our Director of Curriculum Assessment and Instructional Technology. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Deming, if you'll hold a moment. Ms. Brewster is in the audience. Welcome. Ms. Brewster, do you have a few words that you might want to say to us?
I do. Good evening, members of the Pennridge School Board, Dr. Radigan, and the entire Pennridge school community. I'm excited and honored to stand before you this evening to accept the position of Director of Curriculum and Instructional Technology. The Pennridge School District has a reputation as a progressive, competitive, strong school district who expects excellence from students, staff, and administrators. Thank you for your confidence in me to join the Pennridge administrative team. I commit to you that I will work every day for every student in Pennridge. Thank you. I would like to say one more thing. I was so impressed to have a student.
Thank you.
I haven't seen that. I was really impressed and with all the wonderful things that you're doing. So congratulations and thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Deming?
Well, it's a pleasure to make this next motion, primarily because it's a good person, but it's also a gentleman who shares my first name. The motion is to appoint Mr. Dwayne Renner as Assistant Principal at North Middle School. Excuse me, I'm still learning how to use this thing. It's a motion to appoint Mr. Dwayne Renner as Assistant Principal at North Middle School also effective on his earliest availability.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Deming and seconded by Mrs. Yardley to approve Dwayne Renner as our assistant principal at North Middle School. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Renner, do you have something that you would like to say? I won't say welcome since you've already been here.
Good evening. It's my honor and privilege to be here this evening. I've been an employee of Pennridge for 19 years, 10 as a teacher and 9 as the math supervisor. It will be different going to the middle school. However, one of the aspirations that I have is to lead a building someday, and this is the next step in that process. And I couldn't think of a better building to go to than Pennridge North. I hear nothing but good things from the staff and the faculty there. Looking forward to working next to Dr. Cole and being on his team, and I think it's going to be a great experience. So thank you for this opportunity. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. Mr. Deming?
We had a executive session on personnel on September 15th, and from that, we discussed a new organizational chart, which was distributed and discussed, and I'm making a motion that we approve that organizational chart.
Do we have a second to that motion? Moved by Mr. Deming, seconded by Mr. Smith, to approve the revised organizational chart. Comment or questions from board members? Not? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Deming.
I have a motion to approve the following revised job descriptions, which also go along with that organizational chart. Those positions are the assistant to the superintendent for instruction, the assistant to the superintendent for human resources and personnel, the business administrator, the director of curriculum, assessment, and instructional technology, and the director of pupil services.
Thank you. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Deming, seconded by Mr. Thompson, to approve the revised job descriptions for cabinet-level administrators. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Deming.
The third motion is to approve the cabinet member salaries for 2014 to 2015.
Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Deming, seconded by Mrs. Miller, to approve the cabinet member salaries for the year 2014-2015. Comments or questions from board members? Not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Deming?
Thank you. Our next personnel meeting is scheduled for November 12th this year.
Thank you. Mrs. Miller, activities.
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. The Activities Committee met on September 10th. I have the following motions to bring to the board. Motion number 1, to approve the following overnight trip requests, A through D.
Do we have a second to that motion for trip requests?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Miller and seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve the trip request motion. Comments or questions from board members? Not? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mrs. Miller.
Thank you. Second motion to approve general approval for overnight trips for Pennridge High School and middle school teams and activities that may qualify for postseason competition or invitation that will require overnight stays and are recommended by the administration, items A through G.
Thank you. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Miller and seconded by Mrs. Schmidt to approve the general approval of overnight trips. Comments or questions from board members? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mrs. Miller?
Third motion to recommend approval that all gate tickets be $5 per person at home football games Pennridge High School student tickets that have been approved for $4 per ticket must be purchased prior to the game.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Miller, seconded by Mr. Deming to approve the prices of tickets for the home football games. Comments or questions from board members? Mrs. Yardley.
There was at the meeting, well, our last board meeting and then at the committee meeting, there was some discussion about this topic about all students having the opportunity to purchase the discounted tickets ahead of time, and the motion is that it's only high school students, so I believe that all students should have the opportunity to purchase the discounted tickets. That's my comment.
Mrs. Yardy, Dr. Mubarak was going to get some information about that, bring it back to the committee. Was that correct, Dr. Mubarak?
Sure, push the correct button. Yes, we were going to look into that. Was a question brought up. If you remember, when the prices were set, part of the issue was making sure we covered the cost of security for a lot of the middle school and elementary school kids whose parents dropped them off. So it was to offset the cost. So, but it was mentioned by Mr. Schmidt that we look into that, and so it'll come back up again before we set the price tickets for the following school year.
Any other comment? Sorry, any other comments? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay?
Motion carries 6-3. Mrs. Schmidt, Mrs. Yardley, Mr. Verdon? We're no's. I'm sorry.
I'm a no.
Sorry, wrong person. My apologies to both. Mr. Casper as the other no. Mrs. Miller?
The next Activities Committee meeting is scheduled for November 12th, probably 7:30, at the district office.
Thank you very much.
I had a question. It's not on the agenda. Is that all right if it's a non-agenda thing? I just want...
Are you asking if you can interrupt?
I'm asking
right
if I could go non-agenda.
Yes, okay.
Spectrum of Sound, that's in the Activities Committee. Is that Activities Committee?
I haven't heard anything about it.
No, is that typically, that's where that would be in Activities?
Actually, it's
It's a fundraiser.
use of facilities.
Okay. Well, my question is still, is that canceled or is it being held someplace else?
I
And
don't
does
have-
anybody know that?
I don't have that.
I know I'm kind of out of sequence here asking that, so.
You'd have to ask the band director, Mr. Benson.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, thank you.
They use it as a fundraiser, so I don't know where that comes through us.
Right.
It is, my daughter's in the band, and he made an announcement, I guess, at the parent meeting in August, I think.
Okay. The next committee report will be academic performance. We did have a meeting on September 15th. I have a single motion tonight to adopt instructional resources. They are referenced in the agenda. There is one for high school business English, and a number of books for high school English itself, as well as one book for the middle school reading support. I move that we accept these instructional resources as part of the curriculum at Pennridge. Do I have a second to the motion? Moved by Dr. Yarnell, seconded by Mrs. Schmidt, to approve instructional resources. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. The next Academic Performance Committee meeting will be held on the 20th of October at 7:30. And most likely here, as opposed to the committee room, but that will be decided for sure in the future. Next, we go to facilities. Mr. Casper?
Thank you. There are two motions tonight in the Facilities Committee. First, I'll start by saying that the committee met on September 8th. Both motions were discussed in that meeting. First motion is to, number one, to obsolete the items A through E.
Do we have a second to the motion for obsolete items?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Casper, seconded by Mr. Regomo to approve the obsolete items listed in items A through E. Comments or questions from board members? Not all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Casper?
Thank you. The second motion is a motion to approve the change order number 1 for, as listed below, A. It's the Poppy Yoder demolition.
Do we have a second to the change order for the Papa Yoder demolition? Moved by Mr. Casper, seconded by Mr. Snit, to approve that change order number 1. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Casper?
Thank you. The next Facilities Committee meeting is scheduled for October 13th.
Thank you. Finance, Mr. Sarnes.
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. The Finance Committee also met on September 8th, so I have several motions. The first is a motion to approve the contracts, and as noted by Mrs. Herring, there are a couple contracts in here, not only H, but I believe F. We didn't discuss that. I believe there was a couple that weren't discussed at that meeting. So let me answer about H. I guess we'll discuss that first, and since it was brought up during public comment. As you know, we're actually going through our annual audit right now. This came about as during our audit, and what it is, it's an extension of audit procedures involving our benefit plans, I believe. So what this would involve would be some additional testing with regards to who's on the medical plan, agreeing to records provided by outside parties. As you know, I know in other, Bucks County had some issues with their medical plan, so I think it's been suggested that we do this as an additional testing. So that's what this is. I don't know if there's any questions from board members on this. Okay, so that takes care of that. So then I will make the motion for items, contracts back here a minute, contracts A through H.
Do we have a second to the motion on contracts?
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Mr. Sarnes, seconded by Mr. Casper to approve the contracts listed in A through H. Comments or questions from board members? Mrs. Yarvin?
Yeah, I have a question. Contract G wasn't discussed, and so I'm wondering, is that because the district's paying for the registration fees? Is that why that contract is coming through us? Yes, okay. And on there, I noticed when I was reading it, I don't know if it's gone, but the name of the school is spelled incorrectly, and it says school name as you wish it to appear in the program. And I'm not sure so that can be fixed so that the school name is spelled correctly in the program. It's at the bottom. Yes.
Absolutely.
Is that something that can be simply corrected?
What they're going to say is they will absolutely.
I'll double check with Mr. Bowman tomorrow morning, our secretary, that we came through an office.
So it's not something that I'm signing tonight potentially, or it
No,
is?
no, it is not.
Any other comments or questions from board members on this motion?
So
If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Sarnes.
The second is a motion to approve the student activity account requests, and there's only one to establish the high school orchestra activity club.
Do we have a second to the student activity account motion? Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Moved by Mr. Sarnes, seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve the student activity account requests. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Sarnes.
And the final motion is to approve the settlement agreements, which are identified as 2015-8, -9, and -10.
We have a second to that motion. Moved by Mr. Sarnes and seconded by Mrs. Miller to approve settlement agreements. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion, I'm sorry?
Nay.
Nay. Motion carries 8-1. Mr. Sarnes?
The next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for October 13th, and Mrs. Furlong, just so you know, we will be discussing some capital projects and funding at that meeting. So, you know, just so you know, we will be discussing that topic at that meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sarnes. The intermediate unit, Mrs. Miller?
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. The Bucks County IU met on September 16th, and the following items were presented and discussed. Lunafest, a traveling festival of short films designed to celebrate the power of women and girls, is scheduled for Wednesday, October 15th at the Bucks County Playhouse on Main Street in New Hope. Tickets cost $22.25, and proceeds will benefit breast cancer and the Bucks County Women's Initiative programs. The short films are designed to encourage discussion and motivate you to make a difference in your community. The BCIU Education Foundation is holding their 17th annual golf classic on Monday, October 20th at the Doylestown Country Club. Opportunities to sponsor the event range from $100 to $2,500, corresponding to the many opportunities for placing corporate name and logo. On Tuesday, September 30th, a statewide video conference event will be held 7 p.m. to 8:45 p.m. The conference is designed to facilitate hundreds of school leaders to learn about and plan the campaign for equitable public school funding formula. The Pennsylvania Basic Education Funding Campaign is sponsored by the PAIU, PASA, PASBO, PSBA, and Pennsylvania Association of Rural and Small Schools. If interested, I have the address and for you to register online if anyone's interested. Also, if anyone is interested, I have a pamphlet for the BCIU Professional Learning Series for educators 2014-15. Act 48 hours are provided. Subjects are varied and include exploring ways to connect adolescent readers to books, developing a knowledge and understanding of the Holocaust and its relevance to modern society, project-based assessment for high school graduation, PVAS, teacher-specific data, assessment literacy, and the list goes on. I will not go through the whole entire list. The BCIU Art on the Move program was presented. The program is designed to introduce students to original works by local artists using curriculum-related activities in art, math, language arts, social studies, and technology. The collection now includes 350 pieces of art. The program includes original artwork hung in your school by trained staff, an interdisciplinary curriculum, opportunities to share lessons with other educators, opportunity to showcase student work in the BCIU Art on the Move website, opportunities to take part in workshops. Also, I have a list of participating schools if you wish to contact them, if Pennridge is interested in this. It costs $500 for installation and deinstallation of the art, and the works are kept for a semester. So if you're interested, I have that information. Last August, the BCIU Executive Functioning Summer Academy conducted its second annual week-long session at the Doylestown campus, providing explicit instruction for executive functioning skills to students of middle school age. One of the participating districts endorsed the program as an extension of their ESY program, if you're interested. The program emphasizes the development of study strategies and critical thinking skills, including time management, organization strategies, and self-awareness. Students worked to improve memory, project planning, collaborative decision-making, and flexibility to adjust to time constraints and when results were not as planned. During the spring and summer of 2004, each superintendent or designee worked with the BCIU Deputy Executive Director, Dr. Michael Masco, to identify specific district needs for support in the 14-15 school year. In Pennridge, the IU worked with Dr. Pavard regarding possible changes to the middle school model. Board actions included approval of various agreements, purchases, budget revisions, bills for payment, BCIU 2014-15 goals and initiatives, and appointment of a new board member for Quakertown District. For Stroke, I think it was. Our next meeting is scheduled for October 21st at 7 p.m. at the BCIU in Doylestown. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Next committee is the Policy Review Committee. Mr. Deming.
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. We met on September 10th, 2014. I have two motions. The first one is to recommend the following draft policies, numbers A through E.
Do we have a second to the motion to first reading for policies listed in A through E?
That's approval.
I'm sorry, approval for the policies from A through E.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Mr. Deming, seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve these 5 policies. Comments or questions from board members?
So,
This is your,
is this the first reading? Because it doesn't say that. It says draft policies.
It should be first reading.
I think they're draft until they're finally approved. Is that not right?
and it is first reading or it is not?
Draft is the first reading.
Yeah, I was just clarifying because the other one says second.
That's correct.
Okay, so this is just a first reading, okay? Any other comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Next,
And the second motion is to approve the second reading and approval of the following policies, number A and B.
do we have a second to that, the motion to approve second reading of policies? Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Moved by Mr. Deming, seconded by Mrs. Schmidt to approve the policies on public records and graduation requirements. Comments or questions from board members? Not. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion, I'm sorry, nay. 1 nay. Motion carries 8-1. Mr. Deming.
And our next policy review committee is scheduled for September 10th.
Thank you. No, can't be scheduled for September 10th. We did that.
That's when the activities is.
That's what it says here. It says September reading, and it means October.
Okay. And it is on,
It will be the same as personnel.
Oh, personnel or activities?
They're all the same day, November 12th.
November 12th?
Activities,
I have November.
personnel, and policy at the same time.
Okay.
That should be
So that is an error in the agenda. It should be November 12th rather than September 10th.
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Denman. At this point, we'll move to the Upper Bucks County Technical School Committee. That would be Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you. The Upper Bucks County Tech School met on September 18th. First on the agenda that evening, there was an executive session held. Director's report was, there was information on their enrollment. They're up to 692. There was discussion on the comprehensive plan, which is finished and will be posted on their website. It was stated that they're focused on best practices in education as in their comprehensive plan. There was a motion on HVA commissioning, which is to accept a proposal for the commission of the HVAC mechanical in regard to the building and renovations project. There were several motions, one in regard to cosmetology student competition, out-of-state travel for professional development, EMT training agreement for contracted services to provide EMT training to the law enforcement and healthcare career students. There was also obsolete equipment list, which was approved, and the big news was the PSEA, NEA bargaining tentative agreement between Upper Bucks County Tech School and the Upper Bucks County Technical School Education Association, PSEA, NEA, effective upon ratification by the parties through June of 2017. The next meeting is scheduled for October 16th, 2014 at 7:30 at the Upper Bucks County Tech School.
Thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. And I would simply emphasize that both the association as well as the JOC approved that agreement, the tentative agreement, which now has become contractual as soon as the attorneys vetted for the final time. For those of us who were directly involved in that, that certainly is a relief, and I look forward to being able to make progress, especially during the difficult times of renovation at the vocational school.
Dr. Yarnell, I just checked the minutes from the policy review. Somehow the language is incorrect. Motion 1 is for final reading for those, and the 2 new policies for draft were the second ones. I don't know how the pasted incorrectly on that, so I don't know if you need to redo that, because the motion number 1, they have already had first reading, so that was incorrect. So Mr. Deming was correct. Those should be for final draft, but motion 2 should be first reading. So I don't know if you need to redo that. You have to check with the solicitor, because they have had their time, and we're starting to work on procedures for some of these policies that I'm going to bring to the November meeting. I'm going to bring the correct ones at the right time.
This was probably typed by Wayne Deming, who is terrible at it.
I would not put that on you. It's my fault when it doesn't come out correctly. I apologize.
Mr. Cox?
I don't think it would hurt to review the motions.
All right, and that's what we will do. So if the board will retrace our steps back to the Policy Review Committee. Mr. Deming, I believe, was the person who moved the first set of policies, A through E, which are now the final version, and they will become the actual policy if approved. I'm not sure, Mrs. Cron, who seconded the motion? Mr. Thompson, are you still willing to second this motion?
Yes.
Okay. So the motion now stands that we are approving final versions of these policies number 220, 313, 807, 810, 2.2, and 819. Are there comments or questions on the revised motion? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. The second motion, Mr. Deming, I assume you're willing to make this again.
I certainly am.
Okay, and this is the first reading, correct?
We've had the first reading, we're now moving to the second reading.
Yes, but Mrs. Schmidt was the person who seconded. Are you willing to? Yeah, this is the first reading, I believe. Correct?
Correct.
This is the first reading, and we're.
Yeah, number 2 is the first. Yes.
They were inverted.
Correct. Yes.
So, okay, we have the motion by Mr. Deming, the second by Mrs. Schmidt. Comments or questions from board members on the revised motion 2? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? This motion carries 9-0. Thank you. At this point, we will go back to Act 48. I'm sorry, to technology. Mr. Thompson, let's do that first.
Okay, there has not been a meeting. I did have an email question from one of our citizens, and I forwarded that email to Mr. Smith, since it was his jurisdiction under which the decision was made. The question was about the size of the computers that we provided to this year's ninth grade as compared and contrasted to last year's ninth graders. And Mr. Smith was kind enough to answer that to me. I'd like you to, would you repeat that, please, Mr. Smith? Why you chose the question was much smaller. Does that device, is that adequate to do the programming that we have chosen for our curriculum?
Sure. The choice of the device was a combination of survey data that we collected from students and parents. One of the very common things that we were hearing was that there was a desire for a smaller, lighter device. We did demo the device that we went with a student to make sure that it had the capabilities to run all the software it needed for us to deliver the curriculum as we had with the initiative, and that was successful. So those were the factors that led to that recommendation. It was also, we've been looking to try to cut some of the expenses, and we did find a device that was less costly as well.
There's also a question about the carrier, the case that there was. I guess, did we provide a case this year?
In the past, the first year when we filed it, we provided the case to each student. Last year, we allowed students the option, if they had a backpack with padding in it, to choose not to take the case. We do have some cases available. A student wants one that we've collected in the past. So if a student needs a case, but that's basically the approach we've had, is that if a student needs a case, we do have some available that the student could request one.
Has this been communicated to?
I can follow up to make certain that it's been clear.
Thank you. So the Technology Committee has not met. The next Technology Committee meeting will be scheduled as needed. And maybe, since the request was made, we should attempt to get the community up to speed on where we are.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. The next item now is Act 48. Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you. The Act 48 committee did not meet this month, but they are scheduled for October 9th, 2014 at 4 p.m. in the district office.
Thank you. And we'll move to Ad hoc Fundraising Committee. Mrs. Schmidt or Mrs. Yardley or both?
We'll share. So the Ad hoc Fundraising Committee met on September 4th and 15th. At the September 4th meeting, there was, we started with public comment, and there was a comment about the role of the Education Foundation and the community in raising money for the stadium and other projects and looking out over the next 25 years. In the meeting, we reviewed sponsorship pricing recommendations, which is what you have in the agenda tonight. They were the same items that had been discussed at the meeting before, but we had lowered some of the prices after our previous discussion. We discussed the calling the ticket booth main entrance. We discussed that for a while, and about any sponsorships over $10,000 having a multi-year possibility for payment, and we discussed that those would have a contract. We reviewed donation recommendations, so the pricing of that, which was unchanged. We discussed the pavers, and originally at the first one of the meetings before, we had talked about 8x8 blocks, and in this one we decided to add 12x12 blocks, premium blocks, and there'll be a limited number of those, so that you see that in the agenda. And we talked about the pricing and the possibility of getting those donated. We discussed advertising opportunities, and Mr. Loeffler told us that there are 46 openings on the inside track fence on each side, and that in each opening that we could fit 2 signs, 32 inches by 4 feet. And we talked about the pricing. It was also mentioned that the Little League charges something similar for a 3-year commitment, so we thought the price was reasonable. We discussed other schools' campaigns and what they had brought in. We talked about the need for a budget, and we ended the meeting with a public comment. There were several people who commented about the suggestion to invite the middle school, high school teams and PTOs. There was a question about the cost of people's time and details of the campaign. Question asked about to whom checks are written. Question about where PCEF is in the process. A suggestion to have a similar level of commitment to other projects in Pennridge. And a suggestion to have booster clubs sell pavers and keep a portion of the money as a fundraiser for them. And so that was the September 4th meeting.
And then at the September 15th, excuse me, there was public comment at the beginning of the meeting. We received information from Mr. Jeff Loeffler on stadium signage. The first was in regard to aisle letterings and section signage. There was discussion previously that to have that put into the seating areas of the stadium, not only for fundraising uses, but also in the case that the high school uses it for evacuation procedures, so that they can then designate to students what section or what row they're going to. So Mr. Loeffler brought some information regarding that. Also, he gave us possible information regarding possible donation of landscaping and a proposed picnic area by a contractor that has done landscaping work for the district in the past, and the contractor would have a sign denoting their work, which was donated. There was a review of proposed pricing again for sponsorships, donations, and advertising, which was from the previous meeting, just a final tweaking of those prices. There were plans discussed to how to promote the campaign. One was the PR campaign. There was discussion on a mailing campaign through Harris Connect, which is used for our alumni contacts, which is something that's already, it wouldn't incur any costs for Harris Connect to give us information on how to reach out to alumni. There was discussion about the brochure designed to promote the campaign and give information. Some of the discussion was to do a trifold brochure to hand out possibly at the first home game, which will be this Friday on 9/26. Discussion of where raised funds will go, and during that, I believe Mrs. Johnson talked about at the meeting, she was at that meeting on the 15th, creation of a special revenue account. In connection with that, there was discussion about where the funds would be designated from the capital campaign, and that was talked about to replenish the current capital account. There were representatives from PCEF to discuss their role in the fundraising, and because at the past meeting there were questions raised as to how we could involve PCEF, and they're willing to assist, but their general feeling was that they're not built to do a fundraiser of this size. Questions were also raised in regard to tax-deductible donations. If somebody donated, how to make it tax deductible, and it was stated that either through PCEF or the district, both are tax deductible. There was also information sent to us and some discussion on how other districts have handled sponsorships in working with an outside company. During that discussion, we stated that it was something to be considered later once our initial fundraising push is over, but we felt that we could capitalize on the initial fundraising push without having to incur expenses of an outside company. Public comment, and the meeting was adjourned.
Okay, so we have motions, one motion tonight with 5 parts. So I make a motion to approve the Pennridge School District's Rams on the Ridge capital campaign in order to raise and replace funds used to improve the Hellman Field, including the following items. A, donation opportunities for Pennridge High School Stadium project, cost of all signage and pavers to be included as part of the donation. B, sponsorship opportunities, cost for the Pennridge High School Stadium project, cost of all signage to be included as part of the sponsorship. C, advertising opportunities for the high school stadium project, cost for all signage to be included as part of the advertising. D, Rams on the Ridge capital campaign goals. And E, initial advertising budget of $500, cost to be offset from future raised funds.
Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second it, but I have some questions.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Mrs. Yardley, seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve this motion involving the Rams on the Ridge capital campaign. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Thompson?
Yes. I think the way this language is written, it would be really going against the language not to apply this to retired debt. I think we're saying that it's going to be a 10-year campaign, so it's not likely that we're going to be able to put this directly against the project. But as the debt is to be carried over the next 10 years, any funds that come in, I believe, should be used to retire debt. It seems like the language in each of these is pretty specific for Pennridge High School Stadium project. And I think we should clarify that.
Mrs. Yardley?
Yeah. Mrs. Johnson, is that, I mean, is it the money that was borrowed? I mean, do we divide it out and say that the money that was borrowed was used for the stadium? Because there was money in the capital projects fund when we started, so.
What we did with the funds that were borrowed, we used that money this year to pay for the summer project. There's approximately $2 million left in that borrowed funds that can be used for future capital projects, whether it be Hellman Field or roof or driveway paving. So that certainly would be up to the board how they want to use it. The $7 million has been spread out over all the projects this year, with about $2 million remaining in the borrowed funds that have not been expended, separate from what the district has already put aside in capital projects.
So, and what, so you said there's $2 million remaining from the borrowed money, and then what's remaining from the money that was already?
I'm sorry, I